What's going on, guys? It's KY Nakai, the creative, and today we are in Atlanta, Georgia. Today I'm actually going to be doing a full day of photography, a full day of creating basically all the equipment, all the gear that I'm going to use if I was going to shoot photos all day long. Now, it's pretty early in the morning right now, but we're going to start off with a little bit of a drone mission. So I will be using the Mavic Air 2S and some Tiffin ND filters with a polarizer in it as well. We're going to cut right to some early morning shooting just because I'm in a new place. I want to actually start taking out my drone and start flying around and start getting some aerial shots and really get used to using my Mavic Air 2S all over again. All right, so drone's all done. It's charging. I've got to go put the batteries on there because I'm going to be using that later on tonight, but it's going to be time for our first photo walk. So right now it's about 9 o'clock, 9:30, and I'm going to be going on the first photo walk of the day. So right now I'm going to set up this kit. This is the Sony A7riii with a 20mm f1.8G lens on it. Now, the reason why I'm going to use this for some street photography is I want to get nice wide shots, and I'm going to save this 35mm lens for later on for those tighter shots, that portrait kind of look, and if I see anything cool on the street, I can use that 35mm. But because I know I'm going to be getting a lot of buildings, a lot of architecture, I'm going to be using the 20mm lens. I'm in a bridge between two parking garages, which makes it a lot easier to go and find unique perspectives because I'm at a higher elevation. It's not something you normally see because we're usually on the ground. We're usually at ground level. So trying to find a new way to get some unique perspectives is a really good way to enhance your photography. All right, so note to self, if you can do a full day of photography, make sure you go and have hard drives. I lent mine to the crew when they went back to Canada, not realizing that was my last Samsung SSD drive. So I'm gonna pick up two T7s, so 2 terabytes worth of memory, and that should be enough to get me through all of the stuff I wanna shoot for the rest of this trip and to make sure I have decent backups. All right, so non-photography tip, make sure you're eating if you're gonna be walking for long periods of time. So today is my whole day in Atlanta. I'm gonna be doing a lot of photography and stuff like that. I'm gonna be trying to visit a couple places I wanna see, but I wanna make sure that I'm also eating as well. So I also made a step count goal. I wanna try to get to 20,000 steps today. Right now I'm about 7, and it's only about 12 o'clock. I only got like one work thing I gotta do today, but it is what it is. Anyways, we're gonna see how we're eating. A spot that does not just serve fried chicken. So I'm at Arden's Garden right now. I got myself a vegan Caesar salad. I got this apple, pineapple, ginger, some Himalayan sea salt popcorn, and then some energy bites because they said this shit is fire. So I actually tried a little bit of an experiment here. So I decided I was going to take out my Sony FX3, which has a 12 megapixel sensor, which is pretty much the same for all of you guys that also have A7S3s as well. And I decided to get some photos on the 24-70 Sigma art lens too. Now what I'm going to say is this camera is nothing to shake a stick at in terms of photography. It does have really good color. It does have really good sharpness as well. And yeah, it doesn't have the 48 megapixels as some of the other A7R cameras, but the 12 megapixels on the Sony FX3 actually does pretty well. So if you're somebody that's uploading things like Instagram or stuff like that, you can get away with the 12 megapixels that you might find on the Sony A7S3 or on the Sony FX3. So I'd be lying to you if I told you that it didn't take any breaks, but we are at about 8,000 steps and we've been walking around since the morning, so it's time for a nap. There must be a film going on because I know these anywhere. All right, so I woke up from a little bit of a nap, so I feel rested and I'm ready for the second photo walk. Now, this one's a little bit different because we're not gonna be going outside and doing a lot of outdoor photography, not a lot of buildings, not a lot of cars. We're actually gonna go to a couple businesses. So whatever I find that's interesting, I wanna see if I can pop in there, take a couple photos, and maybe I might even buy something. Take a ride, catch a high on the swell. All right, so we're at Hype 247, and I'm actually gonna buy a parachute because I can't be wearing these all over for the rest of my trip. They're gonna fall apart, so I decided I was gonna go buy a pair of shoes. So we're gonna try to find a pair that I can fit into, and if I do get a pair, we're gonna take a couple photos of them before we reach to our next location and then go to Golden Hour for some shooting.
My mother's house, busy making hits in the basement. I ain't even noticed that the sun was out. Caskets on the ceiling, I hope they don't catch us. Trying to sing along to the plan.
All right, so we ended up picking up a pair of shoes, and I have a little bit of time before golden hour and before I try to find another location to go and take some photos at. So I'm gonna go take a couple pictures of these in some cityscape backgrounds, and I might use them on Instagram. We'll see what happens. So I got a couple pictures of these shoes that I had just purchased, and they actually turned out pretty well. But what I also did is while I was taking a walk and while I was getting some golden hour photos, I started asking random people to start taking pictures of them. So some of the photos that you see here are just completely random strangers that I had like mini photo shoots for right before I got into some golden hour street photography. Now what I am going to say is this is where the 35mm G Master lens actually stands out and shines. It has great color representation, it has great amount of sharpness, and it gives you like halfway point between a wider angle lens and something you can use for portraits too. So this entire golden hour session, I almost exclusively used 35mm lens, and I actually think I had a pretty good session with it. I think I got a lot of what I wanted from that first day of Atlanta. I know I didn't have a lot of time to actually go and scout locations and really flesh out the city, but it actually turned out pretty well. Like, I know I was gonna eat healthy on this trip, but they have chicken and waffles, and we do not have that in Canada. All right, so after stopping for food and obviously taking pictures, I got ready to do some night photography. Now, when I do night photography, I grab my tripod, my 20mm and my 35mm lenses, and I start actually shooting something called long exposures. Now, long exposure photography is when you set your shutter speed to hold numbers like 10 seconds or 25 seconds or even sometimes a little bit more, instead of having it to fractions that you normally see on your camera. Now this creates a lot of motion blur in moving objects, and if you set your f-stop to something like f16 or f22, not only do things like buildings stay nice and sharp because they're still, it also creates these light streak effects that you actually see on Instagram all the time. So if you ever see light photography with a bunch of light streaks in it, it's because the motion blur gets rid of the car, but it leaves that light behind it. With that being said, I wanted to see what it looked like from a higher elevation like we talked about before, so I actually brought out my Mavic Air 2S and I started shooting some long exposure photography with that as well. And I think I got some of my favorite photos from this trip. Now, honestly, Atlanta was a whole vibe. I wish I had a little bit more time to explore and do a little bit more photography, but this is just what a day of photography looks like when I have a day to myself. And basically what I wanted to do is I just wanted to create some stuff that I don't necessarily have to put on social media. It doesn't have to be for client work, it doesn't have to be for a brand deal, but it's just something that I wanted to do because I want to have a little fun. I haven't actually been to Atlanta before, so it was nice to just kind of get out and do some photography. But we're going to keep going on with this trip, and I'll see you guys in the next video.